Right now, behind closed doors, there is a silent, absolutely unrelenting war being fought. And look, it's not a war fought with armies or artillery or, physical borders. It's being fought over the human mind. Literally millions of young men are waking up every single day completely trapped in an invisible cage of their own making. They fight, they struggle, they try to just force their way forward through sheer brute force. And yet, they crash against the exact same invisible walls over and over again. They keep breaking those solemn promises they made to themselves in the quiet hours of the night. It's devastating.
Now, you might look at your own constant failures and think, man, it's simply a lack of willpower. You might label it laziness or apathy or whatever, but I'm telling you, that is just the surface-level noise. In this explainer, we're diving into a genuinely terrifying reality. This is a calculated psychological trap. These guys aren't failing because they're weak. No way. They're failing because their very own subconscious minds have been weaponized against them by default. They are quite literally running on corrupted code that they never ever chose to install.
So this is the question that should absolutely keep you awake at night. Why on earth do intelligent, highly capable young men find themselves utterly paralyzed? Think about it. They possess deep intellectual awareness. They know exactly what they need to do. Yet, they have an absolute inability to break these destructive behavioral cycles. They sabotage their own futures with clinical precision, just frozen in place. Why?
Let's dive right into this. Section 1. The operating system, conscious versus subconscious.
Okay, to really understand why you repeatedly fail, we have to expose this hidden architecture. See, the subconscious mind does not operate like your conscious mind at all. It has zero critical filter. It doesn't weigh long-term consequences. What it is an unblinking 24/7 surveillance system. It accepts every single piece of raw data you feed it as absolute, unquestionable truth, and then it just executes it blindly. Your conscious mind? It's literally just a passenger locked in the dark hull of a ship, screaming instructions that no one can hear, while the mechanical subconscious steers you straight into the rocks.
And this right here brings us to the fatal flaw that most people are operating under: the illusion of intellect. People actually believe that just reading self-help books or merely wanting a different life is somehow going to magically override this automated biological steering system. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Your intellect means absolutely nothing to your subconscious. The conscious mind decides what it wants, sure, but the subconscious dictates what actually happens. Without a total, from-the-ground-up rewrite of the code, just wanting change is totally useless.
Moving on to Section 2, the Mind Rewrite Protocol, Strategies 1 and 2.
All right, so now that we can actually see the trap, we've got to aggressively dismantle it before time runs out. Strategy 1 is consistent mental repetition. Look, the human brain is essentially a biological reinforcement machine. If you run a thought through your mind just once, it's like a faint footprint in the dirt. A breeze comes along and it's gone. But if you ruthlessly repeat an empowering thought a million times, that footprint hardens into a massive, concrete, multi-lane highway carved right down into the dark machinery of your mind. You cannot just dabble in this. You've got to hammer away at it until the new data locks into unshakable subconscious conviction.
But here's the catch. Repetition completely fails if the gates are left wide open. Remember, the subconscious cannot tell the difference between objective reality and a glowing screen. If you flood your mind with toxic inputs, outraged media, chaos, constant doubt, your subconscious just accepts that garbage as your baseline reality. That triggers chronic inadequacy. So, strategy 2 is building an impenetrable perimeter. You have to ruthlessly filter the garbage out and force-feed your mind empowering data. There is absolutely no neutral ground here.
Which brings us to Section 3, Smashing the Anxiety Barrier, Strategies 3 and 4. Now, I have to warn you, the very second you attempt to alter this programming, you're going to hit a massive brick wall. When your new self-image collides with those old, ingrained habits, it creates severe internal friction. Your brain starts dumping chemicals that make you feel terrified, delivering this incredibly deceptive biological whisper: stop, this is dangerous, go back to what is familiar. The system is actually fighting back violently. It wants you safely tucked away in the suffocating safety of mediocrity. Why? Because to the primitive subconscious, a familiar hell is always, always safer than an unfamiliar heaven.
And this is where most young men completely misread the situation. They mistake this deep self-doubt and jittery fear for a sign that they're failing. But here is a truly wild neurological reality. When you break a habit, your brain's amygdala literally fires the exact same panic signals as if you were in real physical danger. Anxiety isn't a failure, guys.
It is the absolute, literal biological proof that you are growing. It is the mechanical sound of your old programming tearing apart. You have to push forward despite the terror.
Pushing through that anxiety leads us to the master ignition key, igniting subconscious action. Because intellectual awareness alone will never, ever change your life. The human mind does not move on cold logic. It moves on emotion. You've got to visualize your success so vividly, with such microscopic detail, that your nervous system truly feels the raw, visceral emotions of power and victory. When you infuse your new vision with this intense emotional state, you bypass cold logic completely. This emotional investment hits the deep operational drives of the subconscious, and it practically forces your body into automated, ruthless physical action.
Let's look at the dark side of this. Section 4, Systemic Harvesting and the Collapse. What happens if you refuse to take control of this internal architecture? Well, a terrifying sequence of events unfolds down in the dark. Ask yourself, who actually benefits when your mind is unguarded? Multi-billion-dollar industries thrive exclusively on your emotional instability. Social media algorithms, massive entertainment conglomerates, these digital platforms, they aren't neutral tools. They are highly sophisticated psychological weapons engineered to hijack your subconscious and feed you infinite loops of hyper-stimulating inputs. They keep you perpetually anxious, intellectually passive, and totally compliant. They are quite literally harvesting your life.
This timeline maps out the rapid, compounding collapse. First up, the normalization of stagnation. You just stop fighting and accept mediocrity as your permanent state. Next comes profound psychological decay. This is where your unmanaged, automated habits turn actively hostile. You start destroying your relationships, your career, driven entirely by this internal programming that demands self-destruction. And finally, the total surrender of autonomy. You cease to be a person making actual choices. You become a completely reactive entity, manipulated by external forces. A ghost in your own machine, just watching your life pass by while chained to the floorboards.
So why do vulnerable young men misread this threat until it's way too late? It's because the collapse doesn't happen with some massive explosion. It happens quietly, wrapped in the false security of a totally normal Tuesday, where you're scrolling on your phone for 4 hours instead of actually building a future. But right beside that illusion of safety is an invisible, catastrophic background collapse. They fail to realize their thoughts are manufactured by external architectures, delaying until tomorrow, completely blind until the invisible trap tightens permanently around their throat.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final point, Section 5, the final crossroads. We are standing at a critical juncture right now, where the trajectory of an entire life splits into terrifyingly distinct, irreversible outcomes. The margin for error has basically vanished. Path 1 is absolute compliance. Just continuing down that automated highway as a helpless passenger in a vehicle driving straight off a cliff. Path 2 is the grinding friction of awakening. That means stepping right into the fire, building iron walls around your inputs, and violently ripping your power back through relentless repetition and vision. Or there's Path 3, a catastrophic psychological break where the mind completely refuses to adapt, leaving you paralyzed in permanent, crushing regret.
These three fates are stretching out before you right this very second, silent and waiting. Every single moment you spend hesitating, scrolling, or making excuses, it locks you deeper and deeper into one of them. The machinery of your mind does not pause. It does not care about your good intentions. It only executes your inputs and your repetitions. The walls of the cage are closing in fast, and the time for passive observation has long since passed. Look really closely at your daily habits. Look at the friction you are avoiding right now. Which of these paths are you already walking?